Welcome back to the shop and to the channel. Well, I would like to get a little more progress made on the Sanford surface grinder. And before I can start making some sparks, I really want to put a wheel guard on this thing. And the one that I have is broken. So before I can get a wheel in here and get it spinning up to speed, I need to fix this thing. As you can see here, half of the clamp that holds this wheel guard in position onto the spindle is cracked completely through. This should be a pretty easy repair. I think I'll grind out this thing, give it a nice big V, and then weld it up with the TIG welder. But I need to hold this tab in position so it actually functions the way it needs to. Well, I have this piece of scrap steel, which is just a slight little bit too big, and it might work, at least in some part, to help me fixture this piece together to where it at least will hold its shape. Took a little bit of the diameter off on the lathe. It's not completely necessary, I don't think, to do this, but it'll help me at least a little bit keep this thing in its proper position. And since I'm going to be grinding away some of this, crack or the break, I got this little tab here. I just drilled a hole in a piece of flat bar to approximate the gap that was here when this thing was originally cast. I ground a good V into where this break was, probably about 80% of the way through. I put some brass shims in there to kind of fill up a little bit more of that gap. I ended up cutting a notch in the side of this piece of scrap, but I really don't think I needed to do that, but I suppose it's not going to hurt. Just to minimize any extra distortion or anything that can be caused while I TIG weld this thing, I am going to preheat this a bit with the oxyacetylene torch. Unfortunately, the cameraman forgot to hit record when I was doing the TIG welding. I think I'm going to have to fire him and look for somebody new. But I got this piece TIG welded up. I did overheat it just a little bit here, so I got some aluminum kind of crept its way onto the interior. So I got to clean that up. And I think if I would not have cut that notch in that piece of scrap, I wouldn't have had so much to clean up. But a little sanding wheel on the die grinder, and it should clean up really easy. Well, I can get this mounted up on the spindle. We'll tighten down the set screw and hope it doesn't break. I'm sure it won't. My welds are good. Well, that's part of the project done, so I need to take this back off of here because it needs a cover for the front. I have this scrap piece of 2024 aluminum that I want to use for the cover. 2024 is a decent aluminum, but you can't weld it, and it's got some other properties that don't really make it all that great for much anything, really. At least not in, my kind of fabricating. So I think it makes more sense to use it here rather than it sit in a drawer somewhere. The guard has a couple of threaded holes on the front here, and I think what I'll do first is locate these holes, drill clearance holes for them first, and then I'll cut the cover to shape. I'll use a center punch here to mark the location of the holes, and then I'll just take it over to the drill press, drill the holes, and I'll bring it back when I'm done. Well, I've got the holes drilled in this sheet of aluminum. I've got a couple of socket head cap screws. We'll mount it to it, and then we can start drawing out the shape that I need to cut this down to. With that shape drawn out, now I'll take this over to the bandsaw and the grinder and whatever tools I figure I'm going to need, and we'll cut this to shape. That's just going to be a lot of loud noise and whatnot, so I'll bring you back when I have something a little more looking like a guard. The hub in the center of the grinding wheel sticks out a little bit further than a flush cover on that guard would allow. So I'm using this worn out old hole saw to bore out a hole so that the cover isn't interfering with that hub. Do a little cleanup here with a flap wheel, clean up the inside of that hole, and also to deburr the edges. Well, I'll get the guard mounted back up on the spindle. I'll mount up a wheel, and we'll put the cover on and see how everything fits. Well, I think that fits really nicely. It's not a factory one. If I could find a factory one, I'd love to have one. If I could borrow a factory one, I'd love to get one recast. So if you happen to have a factory Sanford surface grinder wheel guard cover that you would lend to me just for a moment, I have a friend that might be able to cast me a new one. But I do think it's time to make some sparks. I have a diamond wheel dresser here clamped down on the table. Never done this before, so I think I'm doing it the right way. I think I have this thing angled correctly, but we'll take a little bit of the edge of the wheel off. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. Well, I guess that is okay. Well, the proof will be in the pudding, because the first thing I want to do with this thing is skim over this table so it is nice and flat and true with the spindle of the grinder. So I guess what I want to do here is get this wheel down close to the table, and then I'll slowly move it back and forth until I see some kind of a spark, and I guess go from there. I've never done this before. Watched a few YouTube videos, but I guess you can watch all the videos you want, but until you actually try it, you're really not learning much. I'm using the hand wheel on the column to, there we got some sparks. So we got a few little sparks. I don't want to go much further than that. Let's see how it goes. It's might be that's a little bit heavy. I don't know. We'll leave it where it's at, but let's move over a little bit more, and we'll try to take another pass and work our way across the. That felt like it was a little bit deep. So I raised it up a little bit, but man, is that ever taking a big chunk. And I don't know if I'm moving fast enough, left and right. Should I be moving faster? I don't know. It feels like I'm moving slow when I watch this video back, but while I was doing it, it doesn't feel like I'm taking this much of a bite that I should have those kind of sparks, but I think watching this back, boy, this is not going to go well. Oh yeah, well, that's not really what I wanted. Gee, what is this? Is this me not knowing what the hell I'm doing? Probably. Is it a bit of a light-duty motor? Maybe. Am I doing something else wrong? Almost definitely. But, unless I took 300 thousandths off of the top of this thing, I'm not going to ruin it. So I am going to forge ahead a little bit here, which might prove to be a mistake. We'll see. I think everything's fixable, don't you? Well, I quit about halfway across the table because it seemed like the further I came to the front of the table, the grinder was taking a deeper and deeper bite. And what that's telling me is that the spindle isn't square with the table. And maybe that's an indication of how much wear is in the ways on the underside of this table. That there's more wear on the ways on the back than there are in the front. So the front was higher in relationship to the spindle. So what I've decided to do is come back to the front of the table and take, half of a thousandth, maybe less at a time, and work my way back until it stops sparking. And then I'm going to have to come back to the front and repeat this over and over again. If I had to guess, I would say I'm going to be at this for a while, probably in the neighborhood of an hour or more to do all of these passes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to bring you back when this thing resembles a little bit more like a flat table. Well, as I suspected, that took hours to get to this point, probably a couple hours. And I didn't redress the wheel at all the entire time. So I am taking some narrower passes from the back to the front. Everything seems to be running true. I am getting some strange artifacts in the surface, although you can't feel them. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to take this one last, I'll call it a roughing pass, and then I'll dress the wheel, and then I'll do this again, this time taking a much lighter depth of grind. Well, I'm going to call these roughing grinds complete, and it was a rough process. Now, it feels fine, but it looks not great, and it looks worse in the camera than it does in person. But I think what I'm going to do now is go ahead and dress this wheel, get a nice clean dress on it, and then we'll try for a finish grind. With that nice fresh dressing on the wheel, I'm just lowering it slowly until I see some indication of sparks. We just got a small indication. I'm going to take maybe 2 10,000ths off here, and I will grind this across all the way, and then I'll go back again without adjusting the height of the grinding wheel to spark it out, as the kids say these days, and we'll take a look at the finish. Well, the surface feels really great. It doesn't look great in the camera. It actually looks better in person than the camera is representing. There is some strange artifacting in there. I'm not exactly sure what those are from. Could be that the wheel is out of balance. I did not balance this thing, nor do I have a way to balance it. but it feels really good. Or maybe it's just the material itself, the cast iron. I don't know. But what I do know is I'm done grinding the surface of this table. And I also know that I am done in the shop for today. That kind of wore me out. Standing in front of this thing for hours, winding that wheel back and forth, in and out, just took quite a bit out of these old knees. So I'm going to call it a day. But it is coming together. Next step will be to get the mag chuck put on here. I do want to do the same thing. I want to grind in the mag chuck. Hopefully it's not nearly as bad as the table. And then we'll work on doing some other tests to see how good this grinder is going to work out. I am interested in your comments. I do read them all. I don't always have time to reply to them all. So drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you're not a subscriber. I know about 75% of the people that watch these videos aren't subscribed. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but I appreciate you watching nonetheless. And a special thanks to those that are supporting the channel on PayPal and Patreon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.